Start again.
I'm ambivalent to bring too many people to the United People's Assembly too quickly, because it is an embryonic organization. It is, imagine you're going to a party in the back, somebody's backyard to celebrate their new deck. And the only thing that is up are half a dozen of the foundation pieces. So you can't exactly hold the party yet. However, if someone is interested enough to help build the deck, then yeah, come on along.
Come
but I
on
don't want
over.
to. Yeah, I don't want to open it up too quickly to too many people just popping in and taking a look to see. I want it open. I want to open it to people who are willing to roll up their sleeves and get to work.
Right on. I need to hear that kind of stuff because I'm shooting from the hip and running fast and hitting wall after wall when I need to slow down. And I want to welcome Chandler Dio. He's my friend for a long time, and he's probably new to Zoom. And Chandler, if you want to tell us a little bit about where you're from and what.
My first time in Zoom. So all this
Well, welcome.
Technology. Thank you. Yeah, I live in Oceanside, just down the road from TC. We've been friends for many, many years, and I've been here 22 or 23 years, like that. Originally from upstate New York, and that's where I was born. But I did go to college at Fresno State, so that's one of the hooks. But I'm retired. Been retired for many years, and so basically just do all of the things I like to do, my hobbies. I have a lot of hobbies that I like to do. This is one of them.
Well, thank you, Chandler. So there's probably just going to be this few of us. So I want to practice saying, what is the purpose of this group or deliberative democracy that I'm trying to start a server for? And the purpose is to promote this platform that Stanford University Center for Deliberative Democracy, they have created an automated deliberative. I'm getting an echo. So let me begin again, fresh. The purpose of deliberative democracy as a group is to promote the Stanford online automated deliberative discussion platform. And the idea is, if this works, we can distribute it and it can scale up to be millions of people learning how to have informed, facilitated discussion. And what they find out is that people actually change. So where most of the groups are working on parties, politics, policies, laws, litigation, we're going to work on the people. We want to change how people relate to each other and to themselves. And that's the major purpose of this deliberative democracy platform. That's my first shot at the elevator speech. So Chandler is probably going to be one of the participants. Is that correct, Chandler? So Chandler, what do you need to know to be more invited to participate in this?
Well, the questionnaire, that was to determine what the topic of discussion is, right?
Okay.
And are we going to get more information?
Yes. Okay. To update you, we finished our poll and we determined that we're going to work on, we decided the question will be, it's on the energy and environment. And the particular question is influencing greenhouse gas emissions through incentives and regulations. So there's there's about 12 pages of briefing and a video. So what will happen is I will send you the briefing and the video, and you can take a look at that, and then you can decide if you actually want to participate or not. And at that point, if you say yes, I guess I'll get SAS involved, and he'll help me figure out how to make a list of who's actually going to be participating, and we'll probably create. We'll stay in touch through email then till the day of the test.
So based on the information that you're going to send around, we're going to review it, and then is it going to be like a debate type format where someone has a few seconds to say their position and then somebody refutes it, or is it just going to open question?
Okay, very good question, Chandler. The automated facilitator will introduce the topic, and there'll be a brief statement about what it is, and then on the side panel there'll be for and against, pro and con arguments, and then we'll each be given 45 seconds to make a statement, and then the facilitator will put us in the queue, and we'll then we'll come up on the queue, and then when it's our turn to talk, we'll say what we're saying, and we have 30 to 45 minutes, so we can cover a lot of ground. And I don't know if that answered your question
So
fully.
basically making statements then. So there's not dialogue going back and forth?
Not between the participants. No, it would be, well, see, we'll all be like on this Zoom call. You'll see me, I'll see you. And it'll be just like a Zoom call. And so when I talk, you then can get in the queue and respond. Yes. So in that way, it'll be somewhat of a discussion. Yeah, well, that's the experiment, to find out exactly how this works. So, and if it works, we want to scale it up. If it doesn't work, pull the ripcord. And but it's worked really well. They've done this for over 10 years in over 100 countries. And what they found is, in every case, people change. And as they become, well, the first thing, when they're told that their voice matters, they change how they approach the issue, and they become more responsible and more thoughtful and more open-minded. And then they find out that people begin to see each other as human beings and not as the enemy. And so that's the goal. And I'm glad you're asking me these questions, because these are the things we want to learn when we do the experiment. And I can take these questions and work on them later too. So what we've got so far is to have someone ask for information, check it out, and then say if they want to be in or out. And then we get a list going.
Just your group, however many is there, plus the facilitator? There's nobody, none of the outside people?
Ask me that in a different way.
This February 23rd at 7 p.m. This is going to be you and the people you invited, plus the facilitator from Stanford. There's not going to be like another group of people from some other place?
No.
Okay.
There'll be 8 to 15 people that we select um, for the experiment. So you would be there, I would be there. If Richard wanted to play, he would be there. But really what I'm hoping for is to get a more diverse group of people, and where we're all on the same page, it's not going to work too well.
Exactly.
And because I was a carpenter and spent my recovery with men, I don't know many women. So it's going to be, SAS is more involved with the voting process, and that's mostly women. So he will invite some people, and we'll see. We'll see. We have, what, less than 2 weeks, but that's plenty of time to do this.
All the questions I have.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Chandler. Richard, do you have anything to say before I ask you about what you're doing?
Well, I would have to say at this point, I'm out,
Right.
and I'm certainly willing to describe my concerns. If you want to do it one-on-one, independently or privately, we can do that. If you want my view in this open forum, I'm happy to do that as well. I must tell you, it's quite contrary to your presentation.
Well, are you saying that you want to protect me by being private? Because I don't mind being exposed.
Well, what I have to say is, again, entirely contrary to what you presented. If you'd like my view here, I'm more than happy to continue talking. So,
Please.
oh, all right then. I have serious concerns about this going forward, and there are a variety of different reasons. But let's imagine, for example, a cruel empire, and it is nobles and serfs, and the serfs will act up and revolt against the emperor. Now imagine that the emperor has rigged a bunch of armaments, flintlocks and such, to explode when they're used and kill the people that are pulling the trigger, not the people on the other end of the barrel.
Okay.
That's what I see this as. I see this as the empire handing you defective weapons that will kill the revolution. Now,
Oh,
I know I have to go further in explaining this because that's a really an obscure concept, but you must understand that real change, real human, personal interaction change begins with people, not with machines. If we are going to make changes in this nation that reduce wealth inequality and return our government back to being responsive to the voters and not to their multi-billion-dollar corporate contributors, which is what we have now. We do not have a democracy. We do not have a representative democracy. We have an oligarchy, plain and simple. It's a government that's being run by the big money billionaires and corporations. I presume you both agree with that view.
Definitely.
And what we have here is AI is one of the primary tools that not only the billionaire class in this nation will use, but internationally will use. If you follow any of the Davos meetings in Switzerland of the past 5 or 10 years, it is all about manipulating the masses. So you mentioned earlier that this AI project actually changes the way that people think, and that people become more interactive and more willing. Let me divert for a moment to our First Amendment, our freedom of speech, our freedom of the press. Years ago, and I think I'm old enough to remember, when there was a brick wall, firewall in broadcasting news, NBC, ABC, CBS, etc. The New York Times. there was a hard, fast wall between the editorial department and the advertising department. They could not communicate. If they were fired. And that was to prevent the advertising money affecting the news. We don't have that anymore. All of our news is driven by advertising. All of our news is fashioned and controlled by advertising. If you look at cable news, for example, half the commercials are on there from Pfizer, the other half are from Raytheon. Well, half and half, but I mean a large percentage. And Chevron and Exxon and BP and all the people who want to make us think for their benefit. That's where we are today. So we've gone through a situation where we had honest, true reporting of the news, and now we have honest, true propaganda. And it's pure and it's simple and it's undeniable. And that is what Chris, I just wrote a book, and the book was called Manufacturing Consent.
Right.
And that's what cable news is, and that's what print news is today. It's manufacturing consent. So manufacturing consent for war, manufacturing consent for allowing the government to continue to not do the will of the people, et cetera, et cetera. I see this particular experiment in AI being a primary tool of the multi-global billionaire community to as a way of not manufacturing consent, but manufacturing compliance. It's frightening to me.
Very good, Richard. That made total sense to me. And however, I don't think, and I may be wrong, I don't think that this is in the hands of the billionaires, or if it is, at what point do we take it away from them? Because AI ain't going away.
Well, neither are the people.
Right. And so this isn't to change opinions. It's to change, well, it does change opinion. It's based on information, pro and con. People, they move their opinion one way or the other. But the major point for me is to get people to open up to their authenticity and not be stuck in this, you're my enemy, and this total rancor. It's like, so if it turns out that what you're saying is that AI is leading us down the path to more of the same, well, then we won't do it. But I'm very thankful that you put that red flag out. And so that's something that we can watch for, to see if the facilitator actually tries to take us in a certain direction, or lets us find our own way to each other.
Looks like Chandler's about to speak.
I have a question for Richard. Is it okay
Sure.
to say that?
Please.
I agree with most of what you said. Where do you see the independent, if you go on YouTube, there's a lot of independent journalism that are not tied to corporations, like the Jimmy Dores, Kyle Kalinski's, David Pacman. I mean, there's a lot of them. And how do you see that as fitting into this, corporate bombardment of propaganda? Do you see that as a possibility?
You may remember a few years ago, YouTube canceled Alex Jones.
Yeah.
Now, Alex Jones is a comedian. It's what he does. He's a showman. So he put up a bunch of stuff, and he'll take a grain of truth and he'll mash it into a fine powder and spread it all over the table and tell you it's snowing. And so, Alex Jones himself was pretty dangerous as far as the national psyche was concerned, because he spoke in such a forthright manner that people who had no way of knowing that there was another side or another direction for the argument to go, drew it all in, sucked it all down and stuck it in their heads, and they believe it. When 90% of what Alex Jones had to say was a lie, and it was his show, it was his shtick, that 10% was real, and it was extremely dangerous. It was extremely dangerous to the people who eventually got him to shut up. Now we go 3 years on, and now people, anybody saying anything against the establishment narrative is eventually canceled or demonetized, so they can't afford to do anything. So as of today, YouTube as a source of considerable information, that is vital to our success as human beings, is no different than MSNBC or CNBC or any other. So the people you speak of are people that I honored and I listened to and I paid attention to, but as long as they remain on YouTube, they cannot speak freely. So if you've switched away from cable news and you're getting your information from YouTube, what I'm telling you now, Chandler, is that there's very little difference between MSNBC and YouTube now. If you actually have to go elsewhere. I don't watch YouTube anymore. Haven't watched cable news in a decade. I feel I know more about what's going on in the world and the direction the world is heading and the things that need to be done to correct our misdirection than anyone else I know, because I get my news from alternate sources. Patreon, for one. Rockfin is probably my primary source. Rockfin, all the people who were kicked off of YouTube went to Rockfin. So you have to be careful when you go to Rockfin, though, because it's just like wandering downtown in a huge city with a high crime rate. There's a really great library there, but there's also folks with knives hiding in the corner. And I would say that, in my view, 90% of the stuff on Rockfin is total BS. It's Alex Jones propaganda stuff or showmanship. But the people who were kicked off of YouTube who still have truth to tell are on Rockfin, and that's what I look for. I look for those people, and I pay attention to people like that. So if you want to know what's going on in the Middle East, you listen to Richard Medhurst on Rockfin. If you want to know what's going on in South America and Mexico, you listen to The Gray Zone on Rockfin. If you want to know what's happening with finance in the USA as far as the government is concerned, you go to Rockfin to Progressive something and listen to Steve Grumbine talk about something monetary theory, MMT they call it. So all the sources are there on Rockfin. You won't get the full and honest truth anymore from TYT. You won't get the full and honest truth anymore from Kyle Kalinske. You will not get the full and honest truth anymore from anyone on YouTube, because they're not allowed to speak the truth. If they speak the truth and it goes contrary to the negative of what comes out of Washington, D.C. or what comes out of Wall Street, they'll get demonetized. They won't be paid for their work through YouTube. Their money will go away. That happened to Graham Elwood is one example. And he's on Rockfin because YouTube didn't like what he was saying. He was railing primarily against the big banks and how they've taken so many people's houses illegally, that he was cut from YouTube and he went over to Rockfin. So that's a long-winded version of my view of media as it currently stands. I hope that answers your question, because by now, obviously, I've forgotten your question.
Yeah, no, I was just asking, how do you see what they've called independent journalist on YouTube, and you gave me a good synopsis there. Um, my what is the challenge though? Because there are people like Jones who
Mhm.
is trying to hang his hat on the First Amendment. Steve Bannon. There's a lot of people trying to say, I have a First Amendment right to say whatever I want to, even though it's false, even though it's entertainment, and you may not know it's entertainment, but I have a right to do that. And so I think the problem is how do you draw the line? How do you draw the line between a Jimmy Dore and, an Alex Jones? I I agree with you. I agree with you that that's going on. I guess if, let's say, I was a proprietor purveyor for YouTube, how would I draw those lines? How would I say Alex Jones is entertainment? You really shouldn't listen to him. Jimmy Dore is trying to give you an update, and he has some honest people in the field. How would you do that? You know what I'm saying? How would you separate? Or do you believe the First Amendment? You should have the right to say the election was stolen, and all this kind of stuff. I think that's the challenge, really.
Yeah, that's the whole point is that if you adhere to our federal constitution, which is still quite viable, and you agree with the concept in the First Amendment, you cannot draw the line.
Yeah.
The antidote to a lie is the truth. The antidote to bad speech is more speech, good speech, truthful speech, honest and considered speech. That's the antidote to lies and falsehood. But we all know, as Sam Clemens said, a lie can be halfway around the world by the time the truth gets its boots on. So it takes 100 statements of analysis and truth to counter one big lie. You remember what we talked earlier about Alex Jones and the 90%, 10% rule, where 10% of what he said was actually true? Well, there is a grain of truth to the stolen elections thing. Many of our elections are manipulated at one level or another, generally at the county level. One good example of that was the way that Tim Canova had his election stolen twice by the Democratic Party in Florida. And I'm not here to cast aspersions specifically on the Democratic Party. I'm a lifelong Democrat. I actually ran for state legislature as a Democrat. But when the Democratic Party and the DNC manipulated elections at the county level to stop Bernie Sanders in 2016 and then again in 2020, I was done with the Democrats forever. There are actually two Democrats I will probably support, but they're only Democrats because they got nowhere else to go.
Well, you're on an island like I am.
Yeah, well, many of us are, and I think that's the whole point of the work that TC's doing, and the work that I'm doing, and the work that the other folks that TC and I were talking to the other night are doing is we're trying to reorganize the people into being active politically, and converting our governments away from for profit at any cost to establishing justice and promoting the general welfare. That's what we're supposed to be doing.
Richard, I know you've been talking a lot, but I really feel like you're a gift to me right now. And you said that you know what's happening and where we're headed and what we need to do. Maybe that weren't your exact words, but it's similar to, in other words, I would love to hear what where you think we are and where we're headed and what we need to do.
I'm happy to go there, but before I want to jump back to Chandler's question for a moment.
Okay.
And say that there's a few things that have developed in my experience over the last few years, and There's one hard rule I have when it comes to consuming information about what's going on in the world. And it's really quite simply stated. If your news has advertising in it, it's not news, it's propaganda. Pure and simple every time. And YouTube is now funded by advertising. So there's the difference. A year ago, they weren't. YouTube purging all those people from their roles, all those artists and performers and commentators from their ranks, was done on purpose to make way for advertisers. So that's why there's no difference between them and MSNBC. So again, if your news has advertising in it, it's not advertising.
So how is Rockfin funded?
I give them $10 a month.
Oh, okay, it's all
Everybody who signs in can go and watch for free, but there's premium content. Most of the information on most of the publishing on there is premium content. And to get all the premium content, just choose a channel and give them $10 a month, and then everything's open to you. So it's subscriber paid. There's no advertising. And that's the model you must use if you want a free flow of information. I almost said the honest truth, but that's not the case, because nobody knows the truth fully and completely. But a free flow of information is there on Rockfin. And for my personal filters, I have a couple of filters when I'm watching Rockfin. If I tune into a channel that I haven't seen before, and they use the word "they" more than 3 times in 1 minute, I change the channel. Because if they want to manipulate us by doing this, and they've actually put up this, I'm mocking a presenter at the moment, and so they want us to do this, and they want to control our lives, and they're putting up, you see. So if somebody's speaking in that manner, they probably don't know what they're talking about, and that's what I use as a filter. Now, going back to TC's question earlier on, how is it that I think you were asking what I've learned from the last few years? I've been handed 2 gifts over the last few years. 2 years ago, it was casting off fear. Be not afraid, because you cannot be honest and truthful if you're afraid. You cannot interact with other human beings when you're afraid. It is fear that took the population of the world and drove them underground for a year with the COVID response. That's a subject we won't get into today, but that was not about health and safety. That was all about fear. So don't be afraid. It's easy to say because we all have fear at one level or another. I fear being judged and found wanting. That's my deepest fear.
Yes.
Then this past year, I learned not to hate.
Yeah.
That we are all in this together, and we all get where we want to be together, or we don't get there at all. So hate must go away. It's got to fall off. We're taught to hate. We're trained to hate, specifically by CNN and MSNBC and Fox. We're trained to hate by absorbing that media. And that's on purpose, I think, to keep people divided so that they do not rise up against the people who are controlling the levers of their government and return the government to the work of the people. It's fear, it's that division, it's the fear and the hatred that keep us from moving forward. And so those are the 2 things I rely on at this point. Does that help?
Yes. And that is what I'm hoping that this getting people talking to each other is going to dissolve that fear of being seen, authentically and the hatred of the other. And, maybe it's a pipe dream to think that by getting people to talk to each other that they can get there. But it's my fucking dream. I'm gonna go for it.
Well, more power to you. I'm going to be watching the experiment. I'll be fascinated by that. But
Right.
I know too much about Bill Gates and Klaus Schwab to trust that that anything AI based is a solution to our societal separations. I think it's just being out there and talking to people and interacting with people and being open and honest with people primarily. First and foremost, just be open and honest.
So you're saying do it in person?
I think that's the only way this is going to happen is one-on-one, person-to-person, people getting together. There was I spoke in our other meeting about the People's Party and how that came to be in the United People's Assembly, how it was the failures of the People's Party that was the fertile ground in which the United People's Assembly is growing. And the difference between the two is the same thing you see with unions in this nation today. There's two different kinds of unions. There's top-down unions and there's bottom-up unions. And there's very, very few bottom-up unions. The ones that are actually getting the work done is on behalf of working people are the bottom-up unions, that where the locals are controlled by the membership, not by the national organization. And that's the same thing with the difference between any of the two major political parties, or any of the major political parties, major and minor, including the People's Assembly, is they're all top down. They're all top down. And the United People's Assembly will cease to exist the moment it becomes top down. The thing is that at this point and so far, we're able to hold each other accountable. So it's still from the bottom up. And gosh, if we can keep it that way, that it is responsible to listening to all voices and responding to all voices, we'll succeed. So another experiment in the works.
Right. Now this is called People's Assembly Party?
United People's Assembly.
United People's Assembly. And I asked you the other night if that was headed towards the Citizens Assembly, and you said, no, you decided to go for a party.
Yeah, the Citizens Assembly is attempting to put pressure on elected officials to get them to do the right thing.
Right.
I think that's futile. Gillens and Page in 2014, two professors, one out of Purdue University and one out of Northwestern, published a study of legislation out of both DC and state houses and how public opinion affects legislation. And the reality is that big money talks and the people don't matter. The Gillens and Page study of 2014 indicated that the statistical effect of people writing letters and calling their elected representative has as much effect on legislation as random background noise. Virtually no, not at all. All of our legislators are, the legislation that comes out of Washington, D.C. and the state houses are all controlled by whoever paid the largest amount of money into the campaign of the legislatures. The voice of the people doesn't matter anymore. So I see that Citizens Assembly as an effort in futility. It's a matter of getting people working together in an open and honest and interactive manner elected to these positions to replace those people who've been bought off. Long, hard road, but beats doing nothing, I suppose.
Right on. Now, in Ireland, what they did was they came to their conclusion. They gave it back to the government because the government kind of invited them to do this. So they were in cahoots with the government to begin with. The government gave them permission. And then the government tweaked it in whatever way they tweaked it. Then they put it to the people for a referendum. And then what the people voted on, they put it into their constitution that abortion would be legal. And they did that in Ireland. So there's possibilities that I understand influencing the people that are in there now is, I could say a lot of cliche things, but it is a waste of time. And what we need is I see citizens assembly is a parallel to government, to where people are creating what they want. And then they look at, do the politicians follow what we want? And if they don't, then we vote them out.
Yeah, every little bit helps, but one of the brightest people I've ever listened to is running again to unseat Nancy Pelosi in the San Francisco District of California. Shahid Buttar is his name. He's extremely intelligent, well thought out, and understands exactly the frustrations of working people and the poor. And he's ready to go to work to help establish justice and promote the general welfare. But the machine is too large. It's too powerful.
They smeared him last time and took him down a path that he didn't really want to go on, but it took the people away from the issues and got them focused on personalities. And of course, then people just did what they know how to do, which is the same old shit.
We're faced with a stone wall, a powerful stone wall, and we're flinging rocks at it. It might take a while, but we'll break it down eventually. But what I'm saying then is that the people of goodwill, people who understand what others are going through and are willing to stand up and fight for other people, know that it's an uphill battle. I mean, it's a Sisyphean task. Keep rolling this stone up the hill and it's going to roll back down again. But we got to roll the stone. It's not something I cannot do. I have to stay involved. Otherwise, I might as well just die.
Right. Well, I was waiting to die, and then I got involved in this thing called copiosis, which is a bridging technology to a money-free society. But anyway, I call it the happy company. And but then I realized that no, I like being involved. I like learning and growing and changing. And I may not change the world, but I'm changing myself, and that changes my world immensely because it's so I want you to come back in, Chandler. Where are you with this?
I'll follow up on what Richard said about fear. I think partisanship, which is one of the real problems, is stemmed from fears. Tribalism is what it is, and their fear of not following the party line or the politician, and that seems to be that fear is causing havoc because if people would think for themselves instead of listening to the dogma from the party or the party leader, things would, I think, eventually turn around and get better. But this tribalism, maybe it's inbred, maybe that's part of the problem of the obstacle of the ball, going up the hill and keep coming down is because we have fear of not belonging. And if they don't sign up, if I don't sign up for a Republican or Democrat, and if I don't follow you did abortion. So if I'm a Republican and, abortion is a big issue. And so uh, I think that's a major obstacle. I mean, you see it on the Sean Hannity's and then the Rachel Maddow's. They're like mirrors, opposite of one another, but basically the same thing. They have this view that people try to line up with because they want to be part of this tribe. So it's a terrible obstacle, terrible. And the outgrowth is not only losing, by following this, but you're losing out because you blind. You become blind, basically. You become blind. And I have so many friends. I mean, it's very easy. I have right friends and I have left friends, but I can see they're blinded by their partisanship because their mind isn't even able to even look at it. It's like that ink blot thing where you see one thing or you see another thing, and it's like that's what's going on. And it's, I don't know. I'm like Richard. I really don't know. I mean, this deliberative democracy is one approach trying to break down that partisanship blindness, I'll call it. But if you align yourself, because you and I have been talking about this for years, and I've been telling people for years and years, don't align yourself with a Republican or Democrat or anyone, because if you align yourself, you're going to be blind to the real thing. Democrats are correct some of the time. Republicans are correct some of the time, but most of the time they're both wrong. So, so you can't align yourself. Can't align yourself. I don't know. I have a short story about this. When I was in Syracuse, so this goes back almost 30 years ago, there was this talk show host, and he was a George Bush fan, talker, George Bush, immigration, all this stuff, right? I wrote him a letter and I said, I really like, everything you say. I like you, getting out there. But here's the problem. George Bush is only correct maybe 30% of the time, and the Democrats are maybe correct 30% of the time. So I said, you go on there saying like George Bush is God, when do you realize that you're wrong 70% of the time? And I wrote him this letter, this, very formal letter. And I don't want to take full credit, but he like changed his tune the next morning almost. Well, within a few days, and he started kind of backing off on the George Bush thing. So I don't know. Maybe it helped, maybe it didn't. But that is a reality, that partisanship, if you're going to go 100% with a party or a politician, you're going to be wrong. You're going to be wrong on the issues more than half the time. So that's my 2 cents.
Thanks, Chandler. And I agree. It's kind of like, if we look for the outcome right now, it's very pessimistic in my view, that it's because it's a uphill battle and it's a long road. However, I like to stay focused on here and now, which is, Richard, you're on the path and I'm working on something. The other night we had a group of people and we're all on the path, and that gives me hope that somehow people will begin to merge on this road and become a convoy. No, so this has been very eye-opening for me, and this has been a good meeting for me, and I'm glad that both of you are here, because I suffer from magical thinking, and I stay high on hopium, and so it's good for me to get a chance to see some reality, get a good reality check, And so now I really see this more as an experiment and not as the solution where I was seeing it before. So I thank you for that. Richard, what is your path forward?
Same thing you just mentioned, hope or hopium.
Opium, yes.
It's really all we got at this point. We're trying to defeat that monster with sticks and stones, and the only way it can happen is millions of people on the same path, millions of people wanting to reestablish justice and promote the general welfare. Those are the two things I strive for. And coming back full circle on the question of an AI guided coming together of people. Again, my skepticism is about the reliance of the wealthy and the powerful on the future of AI, and to use that tool to try to bring people together. And maybe it is practical and maybe it is isolated, but I realized that the goal of this particular experiment is to get to the people to the point where I'm already fortunate to be, I think, and that is to not fear and to not hate, and to keep first and foremost not necessarily my goals and my feelings and the things that I feel I need, but rather the things that I think we need. I mean, there's a reason the Constitution begins with the words, "We the people." It doesn't mean the same thing now as it did 200 some years ago, but it's valid. It's valid.
And it says to form a more perfect union. And my buddy Sass was running for Congress, and he had the 4 pillars, and his 4th pillar was to diversity without division. And you know, it's like I hear everybody that I'm in contact with talking about bringing the people together. And so maybe I'm barking up a tree with no squirrel, but boy, howdy, if this helped people come together, it would be a good thing, I think. And but if it brings them to the corporate viewpoint, then no, that's not good.
Well, I can guarantee you that I will not be brought to the corporate viewpoint. So
Yeah,
maybe I should maybe I should participate in your experiment as an anchor.
right. Well, I consider Dio an anchor. I mean, Chandler an anchor, because he is on an island and he's not got one side or the other. And so, in other words, you start out with one that's there in hopes that others find that path to say, wait a minute, I'm not in allegiance to anything or anybody. I'm about finding out the truth and coming from my authentic place. So we're at time.
It's been a distinct pleasure, gentlemen.
Yes, thanks a lot, Richard. Thanks for your information. I really enjoyed it, and I think it's a learning experience. I think people have to go into these things, this deliberative discussion, as trying to learn things rather than always pushing the views. So I enjoyed that part of it. Thank you for your information.
You're welcome. Thanks for asking. Thank you for sharing your side of things as well. Your perspective. I shouldn't say your side. It's not about sides at all.
So just before we go, Richard, you're in Oregon?
I am in Oregon, not far from Portland, yes.
Right. And Oregon seems to be the happening place. And the people that I run into like-minded people with, you know, like you say, you've been voting absentee for what, 40 years. So you have a lot of advantages there that the rest of
Oh,
the
you
country doesn't.
speaking about me personally? Oh no, I've been voting the straight Democratic ticket since I could vote until about 2 or 3 years ago when I became independent. So I'm new to the independence game.
Right on. Well, I want to thank you both for being here and making our first meeting of deliberative democracy a wonderful exchange of ideas. And this is what we hope for in the experiment, is that we will come to a place where, oh yeah, I get it. I see your point. And I'll take that into consideration, and we can move forward together. So I don't know how the fuck to stop this.
You're the moderator, so you would push the button.
Okay, well, so that concludes the first meeting of deliberative democracy. Deliberative democracy. And the next step will be to get with SAS and create the invitations and whatnot and so forth. And
But are you
I'll send
having
you
this
one,
on
Richard,
Saturday?
whether you want to come or not.
You've convinced me. I'm in.
Okay.
PC, are you having this particular dialogue every Saturday morning, or just today?
I'm going to do it every Saturday because I'm lonely. I want people to come and talk, and I just want to be in the presence of like-minded people and feel the love and the joy that I feel here today. And that's what I'm hoping that this experiment we're on will start bringing people to understand, that there is a lot of joy in connecting with each other on a deeper level than just the politics of it all.
There may be a way to bring more people in immediately, and that is by switching from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Think of all the millions of people out there who are currently sitting watching their kid kick the soccer ball around the field.
Oh yeah.
They can't be here until after those games are over. So maybe 3 p.m. in the afternoon might be a more eclectic choice.
Thank you, Richard. Yeah. Because I'm thinking in terms of what's convenient for me, and not what would work for the people. And so there you go. Maybe change it to 3 in the afternoon on Saturday afternoon. It's like, well, I want to thank you both for being here, and I am going to say, if there's anything you want to say, speak now or forever hold your peace until next week, or till maybe I'll see you Thursday, Richard. I don't know if you're going to be in that group. It's going to be real interesting to see what Brian and Paul, I don't know if you know either one of those before the meeting, but they hit it off big time.
Mm-hmm.
And they have the policies and the proposals ready to go. So it's just a matter. And then I think in terms of, well, maybe if this works, one of the things that people can discuss is their policies, you know, pros and cons on their policies, and help them refine what it is that they're presenting as far as the consensus of the people.
Well, once again, thank you for inviting me. I totally enjoyed this session.
Thank you, TC.
Thank you. You guys made it real. So, okay.
Have a good day, y'all.
Bye.
Bye.